Hey, everyone. Hi, judges. My name's Clara. I'm 14 years old. I'm standing here today, under these bright America's Got Talent lights, but my heart feels like it's carrying the weight of the whole world on my shoulders. I'm from a beat-down neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois, where dark alleys swallow up hope, where folks like me get forgotten, like we don't even exist. I'm not just here for me, but for this little guy, Ben. He's just 14 months old. So tiny and fragile, with warm brown eyes that feel like the last flicker of light in my life. When I look into Ben's eyes, I see my own pain, my own loneliness, the loss we share. No family, no home, nowhere to call our own. My voice is shaking as I say this, 'cause every word tears at my heart. But I hope you'll listen to my story, 'cause it's a journey of tears, of heartbreak, but with a tiny spark of hope I'm holding on to for both of us. I was born into a working-class family in Chicago, where my parents fought every day just to get by. My dad was a plumber. My mom worked part-time at a little coffee shop nearby. They busted their butts to raise me and my older brother, Tom, who was 17 back then. I can still picture those evenings. Mom sitting at the kitchen table, cooking cheap tacos, her hands trembling from exhaustion, but her smile shining like a star in the night. Dad would tell stories about his grueling days on the job, his voice low and sad, but so full of love, like he wanted to wrap the whole world in his arms. Tom, that wild kid, he'd drag me out to the backyard, playing basketball, his laughter echoing through the neighborhood, making me forget how poor we were. Life wasn't easy, but I always felt warm, safe, until it all came crashing down. When I was 12, a monster of a storm hit Chicago, bringing floods that tore everything apart. The water rose high, flooding our little ground floor apartment. We tried to escape, but the current was too fast, too fierce. I still hear Mom's screams, Dad's calls, Tom's desperate cries in my nightmares every night, but they didn't make it. The floodwaters swept away Dad, Mom, and Tom, leaving me with a hole so deep I thought I'd never fill it. I survived because I was sleeping over at a friend's house, working on a school project, but when the cops found me, I was numb. Everything I ever loved, my home, my family, those laughs, was washed away, leaving me alone, lost, with a shattered heart. I cried until I had no tears left, but tears couldn't bring them back. It broke me in ways I can't describe, and I felt like the world had turned its back on me. After the flood, they sent me to a foster care center in Chicago, but that place wasn't a home. It was cold, strange, like a prison for me. A family took me in, but they didn't really want me. They only did it for the government money. The foster mom was always snapping at me over the tiniest things. The foster dad ignored me like I was invisible. I felt like a servant, forced to clean, cook, and look after their kids when I was just a kid myself. They wouldn't let me play my violin, the only thing I had left, the only gift Dad ever gave me when I was 9. I loved music. It was my breath, my lifeline, but they banned it, saying it was too noisy, a waste of time, and threatened to throw my violin away if I played. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I snuck out with my violin, packed a few ragged clothes, and ran away, my heart breaking, my hands trembling. I was just 13, but I knew I couldn't stay. There was no home for me there, no place for a girl like me. I wandered the streets of Chicago, sleeping in Lincoln Park, under the Kennedy overpass, anywhere I could find shelter from the rain. I played my violin at street corners, Union Station, flea markets, anywhere people might stop and listen. Some days, I'd scrape together a few bucks, enough for a dry slice of bread or a bottle of milk, but most of the time, I was starving, my stomach growling in the freezing nights. I remember those winter nights, when snow piled up, and I'd curl up under a piece of cardboard, shivering my violin beside me like my only friend. Music was all I had. It kept me alive, kept me from breaking under the weight of my pain. Then, one day, while I was sleeping in the park, I heard a tiny, weak cry coming from a dumpster nearby. I stumbled up, walked over, and found a baby, a tiny little thing, just a few months old, wrapped in a tattered blanket, curled up in the trash. I couldn't believe it. Inside his blanket was a crumpled note, scribbled messily, "Please, someone take care of my baby. I can't keep him anymore." I looked into his warm brown eyes that reminded me of the love I'd lost, like a faint echo of Dad's gaze, and my heart stopped. I saw myself in him. No family, no home, no shelter, just two lost souls in this big, cold city. Tears welled up, silent and heavy, as I realized we were the same, abandoned, forgotten. I didn't know who his parents were, but I knew he was hurting like I was. I picked him up, held him tight against my chest, and made a silent promise. I'd take care of him. I named him Little Ben, because he was so small, but to me, he was a flicker of hope in the darkness of my life. From that moment, Ben became my brother, not by blood, but by love, by empathy, by the shared pain of being alone. I felt his tiny heartbeat against mine, and I swore I'd never let him feel as lost as I did. Since then, I've lived on the streets with Ben every day. I push him in an old stroller I found in a dumpster, heading to street corners to play my violin. Some days, I make enough for a bottle of formula for Ben. Other days, it's just dry bread for both of us. On cold nights, I hold Ben in my arms, sleeping under the rain, letting my violin's music rise above the city's noise. Ben's so tiny, just 14 months now, but he's growing up in danger, in hunger, in fear. I play my violin not just to survive, but to protect him, to let him know his big sister, a 14-year-old girl with nothing, will never let him go. There was this one time Ben cried because he was starving, and I could only hold him, playing a lullaby Mom used to sing to me. I'm not great at singing, but I wanted Ben to feel loved, even though I had nothing left but my violin and a broken heart. On snowy nights, I'd wrap Ben in his tattered blanket, but it was so thin, and I'd hold him tight, shivering, tears dropping onto his little face. I'd whisper, "I won't let you be as lonely as I am, Ben." I promise those moments broke me, but they also gave me strength to keep going. For him, one day, while I was playing my violin on Michigan Avenue, a passerby stopped, listened, and said, "You should try out for America's Got Talent. You've got real talent, kid." I couldn't believe it. Me, a homeless girl wandering the streets, on a stage like this. But then I thought of Ben. I wanted him to have a real home, a warm bed, a childhood free from fear and hunger. I wanted him to know that music, Dad's violin, is our only hope. I spent 3 months preparing, practicing my violin on street corners, saving every penny from the spare change people tossed me to buy a bus ticket to Los Angeles, where they filmed the show. There were days I went hungry, so Ben could have milk. Nights I slept outside in the freezing cold to keep him warm, but I never gave up. I thought of Ben's warm brown eyes, his tiny, fragile smile, and I knew I had to try. For him, for us. Today, I'm standing here on America's Got Talent because I want to change Ben's life. I want him to have a future, not growing up on the icy streets of Chicago, not shivering in the snow, not crying from hunger. I want him to know that his big sister, a 14-year-old girl with no family, no home, nothing at all, did everything she could to keep him safe. I want you, the audience here, the people who might help us, to look at Ben, to see his little brown eyes and feel the pain we share. I'm not great at talking, but I'll play you a song I wrote for Ben to share my love, my pain, and my hope. I hope you'll give me a chance to give Ben a better life, so he doesn't have to suffer like we have. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to this story of two lost souls holding on to each other, still believing in tomorrow.